to the Creative Youth Agency podcast, and this is going to be your home of lots of information. For example, we're going to be talking about things to do with climate change. This is a reality in the world. We shall talk about business and entrepreneurship. How do we enable the young person out there to be able to make a living for themselves in these new times, because the times are actually very different. We shall also talk about health. Without health, we can never be wealthy. And my name is Darren. I'm going to be your host on this podcast. Until then, we shall see what will happen in the future. But for now, let's discuss climate change, which has become actually a reality that we are living through. Many of us live in denial because we don't understand what climate change is. Today, on the seat, I have Simon Oktela. Simon is a business writer. He works with Vision Group, so he's done a couple of things. He's a producer as well of information. He's actually also a presenter on business matters. For those of you who have been watching Urban TV, but also if you read the New Vision, he's written a couple of articles when it comes to matters of business, but also he has attended climate change trainings and so much more. So I thought he would be one of the best people to come here and talk to us about climate change. How are you doing, Simon?
You know, those introductions make me wonder whether it's actually you're hosting.
Yeah. Oh, because you've sat on the other side of it.
No, I kind of sound like you're very important, like I am so informed.
Aren't you?
Well, I am, but those are like two big titles for me. But listen, I am glad to be here.
Yeah.
So climate change is quite an amazing topic to talk about. And I think this is a great initiative to have the youth, listen or watch us, and then at some point, I just think it's important to have several of them come through and share their views as well on what they think climate change is all about. A big topic, you'd say, but for me, I would just say it's a shift in climate, in temperatures and weather. That's it.
A shift in climate and
temperatures and weather. So there's like many things that we grew up knowing. Let's start from the seasons, for instance. We knew. Let's say in March, rains would come. September, rains would come. November, rains would come. That now, you and me know that it's all unpredictable. Yeah? And almost everyone is now blaming each other and saying, what happened?
What happened? What happened? Why do we have this change in different weathers? I mean, it rained in January.
Yeah.
It rained in February. In fact, it has been raining all month. It just how much it rains compared to when it used to flood. So what happened to our weather that we grew up knowing that we had 3 seasons? It started raining in, like you said, March, harvested in around June, September, things harvested in around November, until we came up with things like Thanksgiving, which is not an African thing so much, but that's what it exactly means.
Well, listen, Darren.
So what happened?
I just think, if you look back a bit, let's say 20 years ago, those are like limited pressures on things, climate, environment, and whatnot.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of pressures on, and this is all coming because of, I would say, population, like overpopulation. There's a lot of growth. The numbers have more than tripled, if you want to say. We know that the recent figures, we're at about 45 million. There's a big number of people trying to fend for their families. So there's people that are poor that have to then, let's say, cut trees to make the charcoal, sell, and be able to buy soap, something like that. At the end of the day, you're thinking, we can't put away this person because they have to survive, okay? But in aiding their survival, you are shooting a bigger challenge, or you're creating a bigger problem in the future. And the future is actually now. Okay. We talk about how hot Kampala is. You wake up one morning, it is dusty, it is 7 a.m., it is super hot, and you're just not sure. And before you realize it's midday and it's raining.
Okay.
You get it? So if I just go back to the issue of overpopulation, so then we have everyone trying to make ends meet. Here in Uganda, for instance, there have been regulations of we need to stop cutting down trees, we need to put roadblocks to monitor who is transporting charcoal. But let's not forget that the bigger number of the population we mentioned earlier still relies on they are poverty, they are energy poor.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not hoping that 80% of Ugandans are just going to move on and say, let's abandon charcoal, let's abandon firewood, let's move to electricity.
Mm.
You and me know that we have over 2,000 megawatts created or generated in Uganda. That's how many people actually access
We actually have very few people who have access to electricity. So we have probably idle electricity. I don't know whether would I call it that.
So you hear, so we have electricity generated in excess, but the consumption is lacking. And the reason is simple: we can't connect to the people that we are telling stop cutting trees. You get? So at the end of the day, I think the policymakers have a big role to play. In as much as all of us can sit here and talk about climate change and the effects, there are people that have to take the mantle. If we have 2,000 megawatts generated, we're telling the poor, move away from firewood and charcoal and go to electricity. Just how practical that
which likely they may not be able to afford as the
not even likely. They just can't afford, because you see, electricity is not just a matter of saying get bulbs and put in your house. It's a whole chain of expenditures to be incurred.
To start with, that we are cutting the tree to make a pole.
Okay, so we're going to move away from the cutting of trees now, because now we have poles that are made out of cement. I don't know if they've seen them. That's what Umeme has been using lately. So all the poles are now made out of cement. One, we are preserving the environment, but also they're long lasting. So you're giving yourself about 30 years from now. No dangers. Okay? And of course we know we've had issues of vandalism. So if we have that, we know that is sorted. But if you're cutting trees for survival, how do we deal with that? Okay? So at national level or as a country, there are things we need to address first to help get into the campaign of we don't want to be affected by climate change. Okay? We had this conversation prior to this show, and we were saying industrialization. So we need to create jobs for the young people. We need to produce for export. But we're creating emissions. So what do we do? The industries are polluting well enough and affecting communities. But we need to produce. So the conversation should be, are we ready to say we can still produce and not emit?
Is it possible?
And that's the question. Because come to think of it, you've had people say, we don't need oil and gas. I think we just need to bury that and move on. We need clean energy. I mean, that's the word used by the whites. Clean energy. Clean energy.
The converse now clean energy.
So clean energy.
Green gases.
And if you asked an ordinary Ugandan, what is clean energy?
I don't know.
So clean energy ideally is anything, and it goes back to I think what we said, electricity is one of the things put under clean energy. Anything that you'll use and you don't have any effects going to the environment.
Like solar?
That's clean energy. That's good enough.
Nuclear?
Good enough. So you talk about those things, and you're telling a country like Uganda that has probably just discovered what has been termed as what is going to move us to what? God knows. I think we went past the middle class. So
we entered the middle class.
Okay.
We're in the middle class.
Okay, so yes. But I think with clean energy coming through, the conversation is, can we let oil and gas go? No, we can't. And I've seen experts from Nigeria, from Ghana come through here and have conferences and say, listen, forget about what people are saying. This is where your wealth is as Africans. We can't write off this. You're not going to ask the entire village to abandon firewood in the name of clean energy when they can't even afford what to eat. So if someone has to sell firewood to buy a kilogram of maize flour to feed the family, then the conversation should be, how do we reduce that? Because it's not going away in a blink of an eye.
But Simon, okay, would we rather go to the oil, pick our oil from the ground, so that we can continue producing? But you know, I got shocked. I'll build up on that.
Okay.
I got shocked to learn that there are 15,000 products that are produced out of oil. Over 15,000, including balls, shoes, the polish, the oil that we smear, and all these. Most of plastics they mix something to do with oil. It's just not jet fuel. It's just not a generator and all this. So there's so many products, including clothes, materials, and all those things. So should we stay away from that and have people starve? For example, there's a statistic that I read that had about 5 million people in Eastern Central Africa are likely to die because of no food, because they can't dig. The climate, climate change, temperatures have changed, and they can no longer farm. So should we let these people die and continue with their oil, or we stop and have the population saved?
So let's talk about it in this way. So you and me drive, and it's not once that you complain about fuel prices.
Yeah.
So from here to Hoima, or
400
where these oil wells are, we're hoping if this oil runs to Tanzania and it's back, I am not paying more than what? More than $10 or so for a liter of fuel, thereabout.
Right now we're actually at $1, 3,000. Oh no, 4,000. About $1 plus
About
0.5, 1.5.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So if the provision is going to be that if we have this, for me as a driver, as a person in Uganda, I am going to I'll have to pay less for fuel.
Mm-hmm.
I think the least of the worries for me is what happens then. Because if you talk to the experts from France, let's say the guys from Talo, they will tell you how everything has been accounted for. The risks that we are saying is going to go and affect the environment, that has been covered. Okay? So there's no need to worry about that. But also think about it in this way. You're asking, do we then abandon oil and gas? Countries like Nigeria, countries like Ghana, if it's not for the so-called oil is a curse, which is out of political selfishness in most cases, economic growth has actually been evident in some of these African countries because of oil and gas.
True.
So, the guy is telling us to close the wells and go home. Are they fighting our prosperity, or they're actually telling us, this conversation is about climate change?
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
I think the conversation, Darren, should be what solutions then should we put in place to ensure that as we transit, because the transition is not going to be overnight, as we transit, we have a limit of damage we are creating. Because the bottom line is, we're not the only ones creating, even the guys the other side are creating theirs. Okay? But they're making it look like for us, ours is so evident and it's affecting them more.
Yet you produce less.
You've seen stories of bushes burning. And
and forests burning. I've seen it in.
And we're a bit like that, don't have that yet.
So should we stop now before we get to that point where maybe that will burn down, bushes will burn down?
The conversation must be around mitigation. What are some of the things? If we are emitting because we are having second-hand old cars on the roads, can we walk? Can we walk more? Mm-hmm. Can we ride?